Okay, hello everyone, and thank you for joining us today for the Resilient Energy Studio info session. My name is Kate Shubik. I'm a program director with the New Lab team, and along with my colleague Tom Conboy, who you will meet shortly, we have been leading the Resilient Energy Studio with our partners at the New York City Economic Development Corporation and Con Edison. So I'm going to kick us off today with a brief introduction of New Lab. Then I will turn it over to Tom to provide more details about the studio and the open call opportunity that's live right now. And then we'll hear from our partners at Con Edison and wrap up with a question and answer section at the end. So just a quick note that you can submit questions you have at any time through the Q&A feature that's on Zoom. And we'll also be recording this session and sharing it with everyone who RSVP'd. So you'll be able to pass it along or reference it again if needed. So with that, I'll just jump right in. Some of you may be familiar with New Lab, but for those of you who aren't, New Lab is a community of experts and innovators on a mission to apply transformative technology to help solve major industry and civic challenges. And so we work toward this mission in 4 primary ways. First is our membership community. So we're home to over 200 companies that are working in emerging technologies ranging from AI to robotics to material science. And we have a team that's dedicated to supporting our entrepreneurs and providing them with a suite of both digital and physical resources that help them grow and scale their businesses. The second is our innovation studios. And this is New Lab's nomenclature for our innovation programs, in which we partner with a variety of entities. It can be Fortune 500 companies or government organizations. The common thread is that they either have a business challenge they're looking to solve or a social mission that they need to deliver on. And they believe that there's a way to address this with emerging technology, but are seeking a dedicated channel to help identify and work with some of the most cutting edge solutions that apply to their focus area. The other 2 elements of our business are our venture studio. So this is where we collaborate with leading entrepreneurs to help spin up new companies, and our investment efforts, where we syndicate deals with our network of over 600 investors. And then this slide here is just a nice bird's eye view of some of the New Lab stats that can help bring our business and community to life. On the right, you'll see an image of kind of the inside of our headquarters in Brooklyn. And as I mentioned, again, we support over 200 member companies. So this represents a collective value of $4.2 billion. And they have raised north of $1.5 billion in funding. As I mentioned, we also have a growing network of 600 seed and early stage investors. So we work with them to connect our member companies to, and also work to help syndicate deals. And we have a full-time product realization team and over $5 million of on-site equipment in our headquarters to really help community members take a concept from just an early idea to a full working prototype. And here's a quick overview of New Lab's locations. So as I mentioned, our headquarters are in Brooklyn, New York, in a former shipbuilding facility in the Brooklyn Navy Yard, which is a 300-acre industrial campus. And in a lot of ways, this operates like a mini city, which is great because it can kind of function as a living lab for our member companies. And oftentimes they're testing products and technologies throughout the Navy Yard campus. And it's really just kind of in your own backyard. And this building also includes prototypes, private offices for our members, conference rooms, and several event spaces. We're also excited to be expanding our physical footprint to Detroit later this year, which you see on the right side. And as we solidify those plans, we're actually currently set up in a beta space in Detroit. So at New Lab, we're proud to be home to a dynamic community of members. We have 23% of our companies that are led by a female founder, 70% of founders with a master's degree or doctorate, 39% represent serial entrepreneurs, and 38% of our founders have relocated their headquarters from outside of New York. Really just kind of showing that the New Lab ecosystem is representative of a very diverse set of perspectives. And then I wanted to take a moment to just zoom in on New Lab's innovation studios a bit, since this is what brings us together today. So I previewed this, but just to reiterate, these are where New Lab partners with corporations, government organizations, or other entities to run a program around a specific industry or civic challenge. And this really provides a neutral platform from which innovators, industry leaders, entrepreneurs, and domain experts can really come together and iterate and test emerging solutions against specific use cases and hypotheses, with the goal of de-risking different technologies and helping to scale those promising solutions. So on the right-hand side of this slide, just a few examples of the types of studios we run. So in partnership with Verizon, we have a 5G studio that tests capabilities of different technologies over a 5G node, which is actually installed in New Lab's headquarters in Brooklyn. Prior to the Resilient Energy Studio, we ran the Circular City Studio with the Economic Development Corporation, which sought promising solutions to help decarbonize New York City. And in partnership with Ford Motor Company, the Mobility Studio is designed to advance technologies and products aimed at the transition to an electrified, connected, and autonomous future. So innovation studios are typically run for 12 to 18 months and follow 5 core phases. First is the kickoff, in which New Lab and the studio partner align on the strategic focus areas to address and the criteria for success. Next, we undertake a generative research process to ground the studio in a strong understanding of the focus area. So we do this by speaking with relevant stakeholders, conducting secondary research, and identifying a set of interesting technologies and products that are out there in the market that can be applied to the studio focus. The convene phase is where we recruit relevant startups from across the world to apply to the studio. So that's where we are right now in the Resilient Energy Studio. And then once we select a cohort of startups to participate, these teams then develop pilot project proposals in collaboration with New Lab, the studio partner, and any relevant pilot sites or strategic collaborators. And then, of course, deploying those pilots with the support of the studio team. And as the pilots come to a close, the studio team works with each startup to help facilitate an ongoing relationship with the studio partner or other stakeholders to create a runway for continued work together. So with that, I'm going to invite my colleague Tom on screen now to share more about the Resilient Energy Studio.
Sure. Thank you, Kate. And thank you, everybody, for your time today. As Kate mentioned, I'm a program manager at New Lab. I'm focusing on this Resilient Energy Studio. I'm excited to give you more context on our work to date and our plan for pilots in New York City. So just a quick sketch. Our plan here is to just start with a high-level overview of the studio and our work, then talk about what it means to pilot through an innovation studio with New Lab and what it will mean to pilot in New York City. Then get into our 4 focus areas for the studio and give you a little bit of a background on why we zoomed in on these 4 opportunity areas. Then go over some potential pilot sites that we've identified through the studio. Then go over a timeline for work from essentially today through next spring. And then we'll have a collaborative discussion with our studio partner, Con Ed, about their work and involvement with the studio. So first, we'll start with a high-level overview. Just back one slide. Thanks. So the Resilient Energy Studio is in partnership with the New York City Economic Development Corporation and in collaboration with Con Ed. Our main mission is to cultivate local energy storage capacity. That's by working with a wide network of stakeholders, entrepreneurs, community organizations, energy experts, government partners, and industry stakeholders. And the idea is to advance energy storage in the 5 boroughs of New York City. So the goals will plug into New York City's climate agenda, state climate agenda, by advancing pilot projects to catalyze energy storage solutions that fit local needs. So what does it mean to pilot with New Lab through an innovation studio and through this studio specifically? It can be defined in these 3 core areas. So the first is building and piloting. As part of an innovation studio, you'll receive structured strategy and support from the New Lab team to advance your concept. This Resilient Energy Studio will very much be a team effort through some of the pilot partners that I'll get to. So it will be a wide network of individuals working with you to get your pilot operational in the city. So ongoing support from New Lab as well as DDC, Con Ed, at a network of stakeholders when it comes to things like regulatory approvals, working with developers, and everything under that umbrella. So investment and exposure. There's a total grant funding pool for the studio at the moment of around 240,000. That is to be divided among the participating companies to support pilot development and offset some of the associated costs. I'll note that that's non-dilutive grant funding and there's no equity taken through that process. Close collaboration with potential pilot site hosts, access to New Lab's network of over 600 angel investors and our investment team that's working in early stage deep tech companies every day. And then also some exposure to the Economic Development Corporation and their wide network of funding opportunities in New York City. And this third key area is community and space. So obviously, as Kate mentioned, New Lab has an amazing facility in the Brooklyn Navy Yard. We have over 200 companies there today, scaling transformative technologies. You'd become a member of that space. Engagement with all the experts that are coming into New Lab, the events that we host, and access to our prototyping facility, over $5 billion in prototyping equipment and an 84,000 square foot space in the Navy Yard. I'll move next to the focus areas. This is really the result of a little over 6 months of research with all of those stakeholders I mentioned up front: entrepreneur, government, industry, community groups. And really the question that drove these was, what are the gaps? What can the studio tackle? What is it resourced to tackle in the energy storage market right now? So as a result, we landed on these 4 focus areas, and I'll give you a little bit of a background on each just as I move through them. So the first is safer energy storage for dense urban environments. This is really about energy storage technologies that demonstrate that very important and fundamental mix of safety, energy density, cost, and ease of operations, or plug and play-ness of the technology. It's no secret that there are regulatory hurdles to implementing energy storage in the city, but those technologies that really have that right formula of those different elements will be those that will succeed in the market. So it's lithium ion technologies here, but also open to other technologies that are just demonstrating a very strong mix of those attributes. The second focus area is showcasing community impacts of energy storage. This is a simulation opportunity and a modeling opportunity. It's really about creating that goalpost or that future vision where there is none today. What will distributed energy resources like energy storage look like in communities in the city in 10, 20, 30 years? That's to paint a picture where there isn't one now for community advocates, community groups to say, this is what we want our energy future to look like. So that's primarily a modeling opportunity. The third focus area is demonstrating novel and emerging energy storage solutions. This is about technologies that maybe aren't in the lexicon in the New York City market right now. Things like kinetic storage, long duration energy storage, many other things that I'm not mentioning, but really what's new and out there that could hold unique promise for a dense urban environment and operating in those sorts of conditions. The fourth focus area is electric vehicles and energy storage assets. So there's a few different angles there. Really, it's about thinking about electric vehicles and their batteries as energy storage assets to be used in vehicle to grid capabilities, but also B, just the optimization of all the different things together in, say, multifamily housing development in the city. So what do the EV chargers with the stationary storage with solar on the roof, how are they working together in the most efficient way to use the least energy and produce the highest degree of savings. And then see even how stationary storage can help enable the deployment of EV chargers in a way that requires the least amount of costly improvements to infrastructure or the grid. So those are the 4 focus areas. Next, I'd love to talk about our pilot partners. So these are partners that have essentially said, hey, we're interested. We want to take a look at the applications. Please get us involved, bring us into the fold, and we'd love to help facilitate pilots. So the EDC owns assets throughout the city and is very interested in just testing a wide variety of technologies. Some notable sites are Hunts Point and a collection of properties in Sunset Park. The Port Authority of New York and New Jersey, as you know, they operate LaGuardia and JFK. They have a container terminal in Red Hook as well that's of interest. Jamaica Bay Rockaway Parks Conservancy and the larger National Park Service is interested in testing energy storage technologies, specifically at Gateway National Recreation Area in South Brooklyn and Queens, and also on the South Shore of Staten Island. The Brooklyn Navy Yard, New Lab's home. The yard itself is interested in energy storage technologies, particularly technologies in that 4th focus area around electric vehicle optimization. And then Con Ed has a few test sites through the city and is interested in potential test use cases. So I'll turn now to the timeline. This is kind of a very high level overview of the work that we're doing. Where we are today is bullet 2 on this timeline. You'll see we have an open call close of June 1st coming up. So that's the deadline to submit an application to the studio. We'll be then working towards reviewing the applications, assessing pilot feasibility, notifying finalist teams, and likely early August, with then moving to a studio cohort launch in September. We'll design and deploy pilots from the period of September of this year to about March, April of next year. I will mention that may seem like a very aggressive timeline to some of you that are in the throes of launching these projects. We understand that, we get that. This is a flexible process, and we'd love to get things in motion in this period. And New Lab and the pilot partners and our studio collaborators will be absolutely there to every step of the way to get that underway. Then the studio will wrap up with a public showcase where technologies can be interacted with by the public and some follow-on reports and activities just to create discourse about energy storage in the city. Great. Well, now I'd love to invite Konstantin Spanos up on the screen. He's a senior research and development specialist at Con Ed. And just want to ask him a few questions about Con Ed's involvement with the studio, also just work generally in the space. So Konstantin, thank you for joining us. So I'll jump into our first question. Can you share Con Ed's view on the role energy storage will play in the city's energy future? And what are the critical opportunities or questions you think should be addressed? I think you're on mute, Konstantin.
Happens every time. Thank you. Good morning, everyone. So thanks for the question. I think for us it's pretty critical, and I think, you know, for those who don't know Con Ed, I think we represent about 40% of the load for the entire state of New York. So we deliver around 13 gigawatts, over 13 gigawatts of electricity, and you know that's something that's projected to rise into the future as electric vehicles and heating electrification sort of, you know, continues to be adopted. And as you can imagine, under sort of some of the structural sort of connectivity configurations that we have to live with in New York City and Zone J. It's as this kind of downstate region where a lot of our energy comes from upstate. We're essentially a significant load pocket. You know, the Saconee, Con Edison territory, and Long Island. So these kind of transmission constraints and things like that present various opportunities. Various power grid studies that have been done and simulations that have been done show that, you know, our territory needs to be adopting a significant fraction of, anticipated energy storage, for state level commitments, the new 6 gigawatt commitment, et cetera, being requested by the governor's office and under the Climate Leadership and Community Protection Act. And, we have to meet our city's carbon reduction goals, which cover, all sectors of the economy. So we're committed to that. We're committed to achieving a carbon neutral grid by 2040. And, energy storage is going to be playing, or is already playing, a very critical role in realizing those objectives. So I think your second question was, what are the critical opportunities? I guess questions. I think those are multifold. So, can we integrate energy storage in businesses and homes? I think it's we have limited footprint, we have limited space in the city. Can we decarbonize heating needs with energy storage as well, or potentially with some sort of hybrid solution? Are there novel technologies that can be paired with, conventional lithium batteries that can provide some of those longer duration needs that we experience in the city and provide that backup power for some of these critical customers? So there are a lot of questions that, New York City is well positioned for a lot of emerging technologies, and the opportunity space for energy storage in particular is pretty big here. So.
Yeah, and I know you just touched on some elements of this now, but just curious for the audience, what excited Con Ed to partner with this studio initiative with New Lab and with EDC?
Yeah, sure. So the studio represents a really excellent opportunity for us. So we can, we're hoping to increase our partnerships with you, the EDC, and ultimately the growth stage companies that you guys sort of bring into New Lab. I think that's one of the biggest drivers for us. I'm in research and development, so we have been working with New Lab and the Brooklyn Navy Yard in general with member companies that have helped with a number of sort of challenges that we've had as a company. Which we've worked with companies that helped us inspect and maintain some of our assets, and I think there's that, but there's also the fact that this is a global call. So when we're thinking about technology solutions, New York State has pretty aggressive commitments. But when you think about, the electric grid and sort of renewables integration, a lot of regions around the world have experienced a lot of significant challenges that they're looking to overcome or are already overcoming, that are ahead of us in many ways. And so bringing some of that knowledge and expertise over is something that we're particularly excited about.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think many in the audience are aware of Con Ed's role in scaling energy storage in not just New York City, but the state. How does the Resilient Energy Studio complement this work? And I guess to frame that is, what does it look like to work with Con Ed in a pilot project through past that Con Ed has operated?
So Yeah, I think you're right. We were an energy leader for energy storage in particular. I think we were one of the first utilities to pilot lithium battery storage to defer a major capital upgrade, an infrastructure upgrade in the Brooklyn Queens region. We have a storage team that's continuously examining opportunities around our system for integrating storage. So we are growing in this area pretty quickly, and we're looking at everything from new technologies and research and development, which is my area, but then we have other groups around the company that are looking at capital upgrades, opportunities to pair energy storage at our substations, provide for load relief in the summertime, and to participate in the wholesale market. So we worked on all aspects, from energy storage fire safety, to developing kind of the codes and standards with our fire department, and to where I am, to sort of helping the development of new classes of energy storage systems, and from our research and industrial organization partners. So our involvement is manifold. So we as a company can ideally, we'd like to see something that is demonstration ready. I think that there's a technological threshold where we seek to get involved. Having sort of the listings required from the fire department, the testing data sets to prove fire safety and compliance with that. And I think that's important for UL listings to be achieved, or on a pathway to being achieved in a relatively timely manner that can be demonstrated. And I think really it depends on scale. So obviously smaller scale projects are easier to do. So and that's maybe more in the purview of research and development. But we have so many different departments looking at storage. I think if anything, we are able to kind of accommodate the various use cases that could come from this call. So I think this whole effort would complement kind of what we're looking to do in New York City, and advance the technology opportunity space for us to really consider what we can do.
And you've sort of gotten at my next question through mentioning long duration storage solutions that work in hand with lithium ion technologies. But what are you most excited to see come out of these pilot projects? And would you say, are there any key hypotheses or use cases you're most keen to see tested through this studio?
Yeah, definitely. So the most exciting thing for me, as I mentioned, the global reach of the studio. So I think, yeah, this hands down is, we have those strong commitments, but really, countries around the world, regions around the world, Europe, Australia, Japan, these regions are years ahead of us in terms of witnessing some of the great impacts from renewable energy, and then we are here. So that wealth of knowledge is really something that could help us to understand what solutions are being sort of discussed and sort of applied to address those challenges and the potential opportunities here. So I'm excited about the ability to pilot new classes of energy storage that are potentially safer. And I think for me in particular, I'm looking at indoor systems. I think that recent fire code changes are sort of allowing this. I think we have an opportunity to do something there. It's been a real challenge for us to get to this point, particularly because of lithium-ion battery safety. So that's that. I'm also, I think, really interested in new business models in general. I know storage is still expensive. I'm interested in advancing customer adoption of energy storage, and potentially, business models that can make it, easier for customers to adopt or more cost effective, and to install these systems, and potential revenue sharing models, things like that. And I think, take advantage of some of the programs that we offer, like our dynamic load management programs, and demand response and things like that. But there's that, and then I think sort of more into the use cases of electric vehicles and virtual power plants, and demonstrating sort of responsiveness and the ability to manage charging, and things of this nature that can really help us sort of alleviate the creation of new electric peaks in our networks. So I'm excited about a lot of things, as you can see, but I really want to see indoor storage in New York. I think it's been happening. It's been a slow process to get to this point.
Yeah, certainly think there's a strong opportunity for a studio pilot to tell a story there where there is sort of no story yet. And it's very helpful for, I think, everyone to just hear Con Ed's focus with this studio. So thanks for your time, Konstantin. I have just one final question, which is, if folks are interested in learning more about Con Ed's clean energy work more broadly and Con Ed resources, where can they go?
Okay, so we're a regulated company. There's ample resources all across the web. So there's a ton. Everything that we do is filed with the Department of Public Service. We have a number of channels for people to find out what we do, what our goals are, commitments are. I think the first resource I would recommend is for folks to kind of learn about our vision for what we're thinking about in terms of a modern electricity grid. We're New York City and Westchester County. Folks can search the Distribution System Implementation Plan, our latest report, online. That's prepared annually. It illustrates kind of the progress we've made and are looking to continue making to integrate more distributed energy resources. It's a pretty large document, so spend some time with it. Again, just search for it online. Next resource I think that's a good one is kind of like our long range planning documents. We do those every year. There's an electric long range plan that's published recently, so that can be accessed online as well. This just shows kind of how our goals are getting advanced again within the context of New York State's goals, larger goals. And then there's many kind of like ongoing opportunities at the company and programs which can be kind of readily searched for. So you look online for Con Edison kind of requests for proposals that are active right now, or prior requests for proposals. There are also kind of like online resources for our our non-wires program and some demand response programs. And I think the last thing I would say is there's our REV demonstration projects. All of that stuff is filed with the Department of Public Service, so it's readily searchable through the Department of Public Service docket. So you could search Con Edison kind of REV demonstration quarterly reports, and you should be able to find a wealth of information on some of the interesting use cases that we looked at with energy storage and those projects that are continuing in many ways today. Yeah, I think that would be a good set of resources for anybody. So
yes, that is a pretty comprehensive place to start. So thank you. So now we'll transition to a Q&A. I think we dropped in the chat. Please feel free to continue to put your questions in the Q&A as we start to answer them. And Kate's back now, and we'll just run through some questions.
Awesome. Thank you both. Yeah, actually, Konstantin, we had a couple come in for you, so I'm going to start with those. I think you did a great job overviewing where your interest personally and also Con Ed's interest is as it relates to pilots, but there's a specific question around if Con Ed is more interested or maybe has a preference for physical pilots. So we talked about like actual physical demonstrations of installing energy storage systems, or that more virtual pilot, obviously the software applications that get into more of the kind of modeling and sort of forecasting of the impact of energy storage systems and what that can mean for communities in New York.
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, I personally don't have a preference, and I know that I'm going to be reviewing these, and we're going to have others at the company that are going to be reviewing these. I think really the ultimate challenge I see is an affordability one. I think we really want to have, you know, we want to have wider adoption of energy storage, and I think that there's a lot to be discovered on the business case side, especially as we're looking at, you know, new indoor applications and you know, how do we secure sort of like site access and things like that and share revenues. I think there's a lot of opportunity where you know, we could find ways to make this more cost effective. I'm also, so you know, it's really hard to say we prefer one or the other. I think that we're interested in, you know, storage systems as well as the associated hardware that could potentially communicate with our DERM systems and you know, be responsive and communicate for our dynamic load programs. And so, you know, something that can enable like that two-way connection. And then sort of cost-effective virtual power plants. I think that's always, you know, it's been a really interesting concept we haven't been able to sort of try. So yeah, I think that the new technologies are always really interesting in that they present really new opportunities. They just change our understanding of what's possible with storage. But the business cases are really important for us as well, because we want to improve the economics of this as well. So, or the you know, associated equipment for augmenting the participation and therefore sort of improving some of the economics of these systems is also really important. So.
Excellent.
Yeah, I would say, you know, we're very interested in all of it.
Perfect. Thanks. No, I appreciate you just going a little bit deeper on that. The next question is around, I think you mentioned, Constantine, just before, interest in kind of thinking through different ownership models, so shared ownership of new assets. And someone's asking if Con Ed has had any experience to date with these shared ownership models, or if this is more something that you're looking to, you know, kind of explore and understand.
Not really. So we have, you know, some utility-owned systems. These are part of sort of necessary upgrades to our system. A lot of the storage systems that we're putting into place are third-party owned. We are securing some of like the rights to first dispatch for providing sort of load relief to some of our networks during peak periods. I think what I'm thinking more about is, you know, innovative financing models. I'm not so concerned about utility ownership per se. I'm more concerned about sort of innovative financing models that can facilitate the broader adoption of energy storage, and you know, really sort of take advantage of value stream sharing between sort of manufacturers, sort of retailers, things like that, to provide that storage at a reduced upfront cost, and potentially sort of with some of our potential incentive programs as well, looking into the future to really make that something that's a reality for a mass market kind of adoption, something like that. So. Okay. Yeah, it's more to that effect. I'm not so concerned. We're not so concerned about sort of owning and operating the systems outright. Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you. This next question definitely up for grabs. Tom, Constantine, would love to hear both of your perspectives on it. It's around how we think about the regulatory environment in the US compared to other countries. And certainly, obviously, this studio is very laser focused on not only the US, but New York City specifically, which I know comes with a unique set of a bit more stringent, kind of regulations than perhaps other cities in the US or the world. But would love to hear if either one of you have any thoughts to share on that.
Yeah, I start and just say, yeah, echoing what Kate is saying, this is a New York City focused initiative in terms of operational pilots. And New York City has a bit of a unique regulatory environment. There's a bit of a kind of theme of if you can pilot here and be operational here, being operational in the rest of the country could be a bit easier. So I think just one of the great things about the studio model, though, as Constantine mentioned, global open call in European markets and other places, there are advancements in energy storage that we should be looking at as New Yorkers and adopting here. So that's just a great opportunity. So for global companies, this is a wonderful opportunity to get New York City exposure, New York State eyes on your technology.
Yeah, and what I think that the regulatory environment in New York State is really good for energy storage. I think that through our value of distributed energy resource kind of rates for sort of energy provided to the grid and community solar credits and things like that. There's a lot of opportunity here. We also have a significant need for energy storage. So I think the biggest barrier to adoption has been some of the safety implications of lithium batteries, especially in an indoor context, and particularly in the city. Obviously our big buildings represent the largest fraction of our energy load, and it's the biggest opportunity space for us. But, this is also the biggest challenge because, we don't have the footprints around them. There's space constraints, and then there's real safety challenges around putting batteries in those buildings. So that, where we can apply energy storage, there's been a lot of support for, and we've made a lot of progress. I think that the real barrier has been the safety one, but overall, I think the regulatory environment has made it really good for energy storage in New York.
Excellent. That actually ties in nicely to a question that just came in, which is there going to be efforts to address permitting or regulatory obstacles, long lag times to deployment of projects in these pilots? I think that speaks pretty nicely to one of our focus areas, Tom, and kind of what we're hoping for an outcome there. But would love to have you share a bit more on that.
Yeah, I mean, the short answer to that is yes. As I mentioned, it's no secret that it's a bit difficult to get to a pilot stage in New York City with energy storage technologies as a result of that environment. What we hope is a very helpful output of this studio is a bit of I'll say a guide per se, or just a story at a minimum of how to go through this process so that it can be just a resource for others that are considering going through the approval process. We understand that it's a capital and time intensive process with a healthy degree of uncertainty kind of sprinkled throughout. So any resource that we can provide there as a result of the studio, I think will be just very helpful for the industry.
Yeah, just to build on that, I'll say, this studio is, being supported by the Economic Development Corporation and Con Edison, but really at the heart of this is developing learnings and outcomes that can help the city of New York broadly. So, we're interested in sharing these learnings and highlighting where there's certain challenges or where there's bottlenecks through these pilot projects in order to do exactly what Tom's saying is really, find ways to make it more efficient, to help the folks that are thinking about these processes and these regulations understand from the perspective of a new company, of a young startup who has an emerging technology they want to deploy. What does that path look like right now, and how could we improve it, or how could we make it better? So certainly our goal will be to make sure we're sharing and amplifying those learnings across the city as the studio progresses. Great. We've got a couple more questions here. I know we're coming up on time. We're happy to hang around for a bit more. So folks, feel free to stay on as we kind of wrap up these questions if you can. Another one specific to Con Edison. So the question is Con Ed open to long duration storage systems that utilize non-lithium ion technology? The upfront cost is more expensive, but the duration and life of the storage system makes it more affordable over time.
We're very excited about long duration energy storage developments. I think you know, there are some really cool technologies coming out now. I think this is something that, you know, utilities across the board are really interested in. You know, these devices represent a great opportunity for the replacement of, you know, peaking power plants, and sort of represent the ultimate end state where we're going to have to provide dispatchable generation in the future, and ultimately eliminate the use of fossil-based fuels. So we are definitely interested in long duration energy storage, and that could be, you know, it's hard to develop an integrated system of long duration energy storage and sort of demonstrating that at scale and, you know, fully end to end. But, you know, technologies like that are always of interest. I think, you know, from an R&D side, it gets a little bit more challenging to demonstrate. But, you know, if there are private capital money coming into that, there's a demonstrated partnership coming into that. We're all for it. We know that, you know, lithium ion and hybridized with longer duration energy storage provide just, you know, it really sort of opens up a lot of new opportunities. You know, and there are a lot of long duration energy storage needs in New York City. So yeah, definitely open to it. I think that, you know, new technologies for long duration energy storage are of interest. I think, you know, at all levels, I would say that for us, you know, it's going to be hard to sort of work with some of that unless there's additional funds committed to that. But I think even sort of the understanding of what this technology is and sort of in a limited fashion demonstrating some of that could be really interesting to us. So yes.
Perfect. Thank you. Great. We've just got two more kind of quicker questions here. So one is we offer a part that will enable rare earth-free, lower operational costs for pumps for compression and hydrogen storage. It isn't by itself an energy storage solution. Would you recommend partnering with an OEM or startup that offers end-to-end solution, or do you facilitate partnerships if we can show our value add? I'm happy to start with that one. I think I would say as a first order, you should certainly feel free to reach out to us, the studio team, me and Tom, if you want to talk through your specific technology in any more detail. We're more than happy to get a better understanding of it and help guide you in terms of what would be the best course for the application. So again, that's our resilientenergy@newlab.com email address right here. So anyone should feel free to shoot us a note. I would say generally, you know, we are open to looking at a piece of the solution. So certainly we'll review that and, you know, understand where it fits in that kind of end-to-end solution. And I think the more kind of partnerships you can bring to the table or kind of engagements that you have to show a well-rounded pilot, the better, of course. But we will certainly review it, even if it's a piece of the solution. Definitely throughout our network, we do have the ability to facilitate certain partnerships. Definitely depends on the details of kind of what that looks like. So I know that that's a multi-pronged answer, but feel free to reach out to the team to discuss in more detail with your specifics. Definitely don't hesitate to apply, even if you have a piece of the solution. And I'd say note where you have those partnerships or note where you would need help facilitating them. And then that helps our team on the back end kind of do a full evaluation. Tom, anything you'd add on that?
No, I think that's pretty comprehensive. We're happy to chat further via that Resilient Energy email. And I mean, pilot feasibility will ultimately be the #1 characteristic that we're working through in evaluating applications.
Great. Awesome. And then the last question is, who do we contact at Con Ed with new energy storage technology? So I would say certainly this studio is a way to get your new energy storage technology in front of Con Edison. Obviously, Constantine is partnering with us and his broader team as well. The purpose behind that is exactly this, to just have an understanding of what's out there, what's emerging, what could be unique and interesting to Con Edison. So applying to the studio will certainly be a way that the team is able to kind of review and look at your technology. Constantine, feel free to add anything else in there if you have any thoughts, but.
Yeah, I think there are a number of channels. I think through us directly, our research and development department, where I am, is probably the first point of contact if we're going to go through Con Ed directly. So that would be myself as the storage subject matter expert. There's, we have a lot of industry organization partners. The Electric Power Research Institute represents a great opportunity through their Incubate Energy program, where we get novel technologies being demonstrated at various host utility members that we sort of are involved with and evaluate technologies. But definitely through New Lab and other technology centers and incubators and things like that, where we really get to know that technology and understand some of the development path and the technology readiness. Because this is obviously a good opportunity to familiarize us with your solution and to really maybe inform us of something that we might not even be aware about in terms of how the application can differ from what our current thinking is. So this would be a great opportunity to sort of have a first sort of review and then potentially a future discussion for our continued relationship into the future.
Excellent, thank you. We did get one more question in. If upfront capital costs for the pilot exceed the grant funding, is there any support for additional investment? So happy to take a first stab at that one. I would say, so generally across our innovation studios, the grant funding is not meant to always cover the entire cost of the pilot. It's meant to offset costs associated with it. As Tom walked through, there's a lot of other value and benefit to being a part of the studio. There's, receiving New Lab membership, access to our investor community, access to our other kind of strategic collaborations and partners, access to folks like Con Edison, the Economic Development Corporation, a number of the pilot site partners that we have on board. So there's a kind of package that comes along with that grant funding. The way we see that is really meant to be, again, non-dilutive, used at your discretion in the way that you need to really help just make it easier to run that pilot. The one other piece I would note too is we totally understand that these projects can be quite expensive. Certainly looking at kind of, short-term pilots and taking a look at scale. If it's quite expensive at a scale that, companies think that, is there a way to think about a revised or slightly reduced scope or scale of the program in order to overcome some of those large costs is something that we have it's in mind as well. Awesome. Great. And then one other question about plan to contribute to grant funding with a cost share. So don't have kind of a cost share mechanism set up. We have this kind of pool of grant funding that has been provided to kind of support the studio. And so that will be the kind of pool that we're working with and distributed in that way. Great. Okay. I think that's all of our questions. So Tom, I'll let you round it out.
Yeah, thank you, Constantine. Thanks, Kate. Thank you, everybody, for joining us today. You will also receive a link to a recording of this just for reference for those who RSVP'd. And just want to re-mention, application deadline is June 1st. If you have any questions as you're looking through the application, something is stumping you or something, just send us an email. Kate and I are at the ready to meet with you, talk through those questions, figure out which focus area you're the best fit for, and etc. So yeah, June 1st, application deadline. And thank you, everybody, for your time today. Have a good rest of your day.